ever wondered what it would be like to have a genetic disorder that can cause serious health issues and has no cure? Marfan syndrome is a genetic disorder that is caused by the misshapen fibrillin 1 protein. It produces problems in the cardiovascular system, skeletal system, lungs, eyes, connective tissue, and nervous system. If you have Marfan syndrome, there is a 50% chance of it being passed down to your offspring. There is also a 25% chance that you can be born with the mutation without it being passed down through your family members. Next, we have a case about a young man that has been affected by Marfan syndrome. And now to Mia.
Hi, today I will be talking about Isaiah Austin, a 20-year-old basketball player with Marfan syndrome.
This is 20-year-old Isaiah Austin.
Unfortunately, he could not be here with me today, so I'll be reading what he told me during a previous unaired interview. Here's the interview. I asked him, "How did you find out you have Marfan syndrome?" I was getting a physical done and I took a blood test that came back positive for Marfan syndrome. "And what does this mean for your basketball career?" "I'm forced to stop playing because if I do and I overwork my heart, it could rupture due to me having enlarged arteries, which is a symptom of Marfan syndrome." The NBA draft was only 4 days away when you were diagnosed. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, is it true you've been having seeing problems since 8th grade? Yes, I'm actually blind in my right eye due to the connective tissue problems I have because of my syndrome. Wow, and you continue to play even with that? I love basketball too much to let that get in the way. How did you feel when you learned you had Marfan syndrome? I was extremely sad. It felt like a piece of me was being taken away. My basketball career has been my whole life for so long. I could not handle not being able to play. Do you think you'll stay involved with basketball? Yes, I want to finish college, get my degree, and become a coach somewhere. Do you feel that Marfan syndrome has taken away your life? In a way, I guess, but there are always going to be other opportunities for me. I certainly will miss basketball, but no matter what, I will always have Marfan syndrome, and I will have to deal with that for the rest of my life. Now on to our research specialist.
Hello, I'm a research specialist in Marfan syndrome from Harvard Medical. Marfan syndrome is caused by a missense substitution mutation. There is only one functional copy of the FB1 gene instead of two. This happens during protein synthesis. The dysfunction of the protein leads to fewer microfibrils. This means the tissue elasticity, which affects every system in the body, is weakened. Marfan syndrome mainly affects the connective tissue, which makes up organs and muscle. The most dangerous complications are aortic dilation, which causes the aorta to tear away from the heart or rupture. In the skeletal system, the main symptoms are the breastbone curving in and out, deep hip sockets, crowding, high arched mouths, and disproportionately long arms and legs. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I'm here with specialist Natalie Street to ask her questions about Marfan syndrome. Hello, Natalie.
Hello.
So my first question is, why is Marfan syndrome unique?
Marfan syndrome is unique because there are many different symptoms. These symptoms also affect every individual differently, depending on which one they have.
My next question is, what triggers the disease to affect the heart?
Marfan syndrome affects the aorta, which carries blood from the heart to the rest of the body. The aorta dilates, making it become weak. Marfan syndrome ruptures the inner layers of the aorta, causing a dissection that leads to bleeding in the wall. This can be fatal.
What other symptoms occur in this syndrome?
Some other symptoms that are easy to see include long arms, legs, and fingers, tall and thin body types, curved spine, chest that sinks in or out, flexible joints, crowded teeth, flat feet, and stretch marks that are not related to weight.
So how does a doctor like yourself discover this syndrome on a patient?
The easiest way to see Marfan syndrome is the structural symptoms. To diagnose, I would need to look at the heart, lungs, or eyes. I would look to see enlargement in the aorta too. There can also be sudden lungs collapse and eye problems. The eye problems consist of nearsightedness, dislocated lens, detached retinas.
How does this affect the lungs?
It usually causes a collapsed lung. This causes the air to be built up between the lungs and the chest wall. The nervous system is also affected by dyscalculia, which causes the spinal cord and the bones to wear away.
For my last question, how would you treat this disease?
Because there's no cure, doctors can only focus on treating individual symptoms. There are specialists such as ophthalmologists, physical therapists, and cardiologists.
Thank you, specialist Natalie Street, for answering these questions.
Thank you for having me.
Our next story is Lulu, a little girl affected by Marfan syndrome. I had the pleasure of talking with her parents and they told me her story. Several years back, when Lulu was almost 2 years old, she was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome. Her parents luckily noticed that there were signs of something, but they didn't know what. They took her to the doctor and insisted to have her checked out multiple times. Finally, she was diagnosed with Marfan syndrome and started to receive the necessary treatments. it was learned that Lulu's heart was enlarged, but not anything serious, and her vision and all other symptoms of the syndrome were normal. She needs to be kept under observation to make sure her heart is normal and must be checked by doctors frequently. If her parents hadn't noticed the differences between her and her siblings, such as clumsiness, very skinny, extremely double-jointed, flat-footed, and taller than average, then her symptoms could have gotten way worse, like her aortic enlargement, which could have become fatal. Thank you for listening. Next, we will be talking with Natalie about organic molecules.
Organic molecules consist of carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. Organic molecules are considered the molecules of life because they are vital in our body. Proteins' main function in the body is to carry out jobs within the cells. They are also made up of amino acids. Proteins also regulate tissue and organs of the body. They also provide energy. Marfan syndrome is caused by the fibrillar protein being misshapen, causing connective tissue to become weaker. Many proteins are put together to form connective tissue, muscles, and ligaments. Carbohydrates do not affect Marfan syndrome directly, but without them in our body, it could make it worse. They are also the long-term and short-term energy sources in the body. They consist of fruits, vegetables, pasta, bread, and candy. Also, nucleic acids play a role in Marfan syndrome. Nucleic acids contain all genetic information. There are two types of nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. Marfan syndrome is autosomal dominant, meaning it occurs equally in men and women and can be inherited from just one parent. This can also mean that they are located on the first 22 homologous chromosomes. There is a 50% chance of being passed down and a 25% chance that there is a new FBN1 gene mutation that is not passed down and is created. Lipids are another significant organic molecule. Lipids' main function in the body is to provide a secondary energy source, store fat, and produce more energy. Their monomer is fatty acids. Some examples are butter, lard, fats, and oils. Lipids are also used as a secondary energy source, insulation, and protection. Although lipids do not directly affect Marfan syndrome, without them, our body would not be able to function correctly.
DNA replication, protein synthesis, and cellular transport affect Marfan syndrome greatly. DNA is a double helix that contains the genetic instructions for making proteins. Marfan syndrome is affected by DNA because the gene, FBN1, has a mutation that causes the protein, fibrin1, to become misshapen, which causes the syndrome. DNA replication is the process of making two new strands of DNA by using proteins. In Marfan syndrome, there is no effective DNA replication. This is because the syndrome is caused by a misshapen protein. Protein synthesis is the making of new proteins. There are two main steps, transcription and translation. Marfan syndrome is affected by protein synthesis. When the mutated gene, FBN1, is being coded during transcription, its mutation codes for the shape of fibrin1. Cellular transport is the transport of elements across the cellular membrane. You need this to keep homeostasis, but in Marfan syndrome, the defect on protein fibrin1 causes the delay of it being transported across the cellular membrane. This makes for a clog-up of fibrin1, which causes an unbalanced internal state or non-homeostasis.
Diseases can be inherited from genes passed down through generations. They can either be autosomal dominant or recessive, or they can be sex-linked traits. Autosomes are the first 22 pairs of chromosomes. Dominant traits can be homozygous or heterozygous. Heterozygous means that both alleles in the organism are different. For example, uppercase B, lowercase b. Homozygous means that both alleles in the organism are the same. For example, lowercase b, lowercase b. That is the only way for a recessive trait to occur because dominant traits mask over recessive traits. These are the basics for genetics. Marfan syndrome is caused by a defect or mutation in the FBN1 gene. Marfan syndrome is a genetically inherited trait from the parent or carrier. In this case, Marfan syndrome is an autosomal dominant trait. This means there is a 50% chance of passing it down from parent to offspring. As you can see, the strain that contains Marfan will be passed down because it is present and dominant on this chromosome. It could be passed down to either sex because it is not a sex-linked trait. About 1 in 5,000 people have Marfan syndrome, but for now there is no known cure. Thank you for listening. In conclusion, Marfan syndrome is caused by a mutation in the FBN1 gene. This leads to problems in the connective tissue, which affects almost every system in the body. There are many people in the world living today with this syndrome and learning new ways to cope with it.
Thank you for listening.